Well, hello friends, this here's David Vose. Today is January 27th, 2016. It's good to see everybody today. Well friends, we've been talking a lot about some of my experiences and some of the things that I've been learning. And I think it's been a pretty interesting discussion, but I think, we're learning a lot of things. I think a lot of you enjoy watching the videos, and there's things in here that you are saying that you appreciate and stuff, but there's a lot of questions. Because, and I knew that was going to happen. As soon as I started really telling you stuff, there'd end up being more questions than there was answers. Because, it doesn't matter what I tell you. You have been living in some fantasy world. I was too. Okay, we're all living, that's why I say we're all living under this MK Ultra Mind program. So anything I say, for most of you, except for a very few of you who have maybe some of the same experiences that I have, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say, you're not going to like it. Or it's just not going to make sense to you. And you're going to say, well, he's wrong about that. See, I know that Seventh-day Adventists are right, because I am one. So he's got to be wrong about that. Or you'll say, Joseph Smith had to be, evil, because after all, he dabbled in the occult. Well, see, that's why I spent a long time trying to explain this to you before I even mentioned it. Trying to help you guys to see that what we call the occult is just stuff that they've hidden from us. See, if Joseph Smith had been a bad guy, he would have just hid all that from you. He wouldn't even have told you what he did. But he was honest, and he told you the truth. And he said things that, remember now, this was back in the 1820s and 30s. And he was just a kid, And he was saying stuff that would just boggle the mind. Supposedly, somebody come through there, gave him an ancient manuscript from Egypt. These kind of coincidences don't just happen to the average folk. You see, there's manifest destiny on this planet. Now, the man ended up becoming known as a prophet to millions of people. The man was martyred. The man predicted his death. There's verification, affidavit signed, that he raised the dead. Do you know, Joseph Smith was accused by his own, the Mormon church says Joseph Smith was a polygamist. Okay, don't pay any attention to the fact that the polygamy commandments were all added to their Doctrine and Covenants and Book of Mormon. Everything was added to those books after he died. They literally took a chapter out of the Mormon Gospels and Scripture. They took a chapter out of that book that said that you shouldn't be a polygamist, and replaced it with one that says you should be. All the endowments and the temple stuff and everything was done after Joseph Smith died. Do you think if Joseph Smith was a prophet, let's say you're a Mormon and you're listening to this, and you say, well, I believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. Okay, but you also believe that the Mormon church today is the truth. Okay, you believe that, right? So you're saying that Joseph Smith, according to your church, was a polygamist. Then do you know that you're saying that your own prophet was a false prophet? Because he testified in a court of law that he was not a polygamist. He put his hand on the Bible and swore in a court of law that he did not have any other women but his wife. Now, you've got a choice. You accept Joseph Smith's testimony, or you accept your own church. Joseph Smith testified in a court of law, and he does not lie. Joseph Smith did not lie. I know a lot of Mormons today run around saying, well, it's okay to lie because Joseph Smith did it. He was in court and he lied because he really was a polygamist. Don't you see, Joseph Smith never was a polygamist? If he'd had more than one woman, where are they? Every woman that supposedly was a testified that they were a wife of Joseph Smith, they were also wives of Brigham Young. Brigham Young started this. There's a group of people that was trying for years, while Joseph Smith was alive, to do this polygamous thing. They had gotten over there and they started up this polygamy in different places that they were. And Joseph Smith if you read it, there's evidence on top of evidence. He spent several years trying to stop this doctrine and trying to stop this apostasy. There are statements where Joseph Smith said that Brigham Young was not a good person and he was going to lead the church to hell. And, till the day that all the apostles and people who signed testimonies and affidavits saying that Joseph Smith was a prophet, they saw the plates, they saw the Book of Mormon and the angel and everything, they never, ever, ever, not once, took back their testimony until the day they died. And they all declared under oath with their testimonies as they died that Joseph Smith was a prophet and the Book of Mormon was true. But none of them followed Brigham Young. And Joseph Smith's wife and his children, they didn't follow Brigham Young. Brigham Young spent a lot of effort and time trying to get Emma Smith to follow him to Salt Lake City. And Emma Smith said, "No, you are not the prophet. And my husband said that you are leading the church to hell. And you're lying about my husband because he was not a polygamist. And I'm the only woman he's had. I've been here all the time. There are no children born to Joseph Smith who's ever come forward and said, okay, test my DNA. I'm a child of Joseph Smith. Nope. See, so if he did have all these women, he never slept with them. And, he never claimed to have any. There's never been any proof that he's had any. And all of these religious documents there's brought up today that says, oh, see, Joseph Smith said, this was all presented after he died. Just like somehow miraculously, at the day, like a few days before he died, he's become a 33-degree Mason by the same Masons that went over there and killed him. Joseph Smith was into the occult, to the hidden ancient truths, and was in contact with certain beings of the higher priesthood. And all his testimony is true. He never lied once about what he was doing. Yes, he had a stone, a seer stone. Yes, he had the Urim and Thummim. Yes, he translated ancient languages. Yes, he spoke to spirits. Yes, he had visions and dreams. But you see, that's all the stuff that goes back to Enoch in the higher priesthood. So, there's so many things that are going to stumble so many people. I'm giving this information to help you. You see, Joseph Smith didn't care whether you thought he was a prophet. Mary Baker Eddy didn't care one way or the other whether you thought she was a prophet or her. She didn't do it for that reason. She did that to enlighten you. You read her words and it's going to inspire you. And if you're inspired and you find our Father in heaven through her words, then she has accomplished what she tried to do. See, Joseph Smith was a little bit different. He brought in certain keys to open up the last days. Certain administration and angels and a certain work that had to be done on the earth in these latter days. He brought certain keys of knowledge back to the earth and opened up the mysteries. But this is something that I want to talk about in some other videos. Now see, I was raised, a lot of you by now probably wondered just what kind of mind control organization I was involved in. Well, for a long time I didn't really want to mention what that might be because, I don't want... For a long time I thought, well, if I told people that I was raised as Jehovah's Witness, they would probably say, oh, well, you're one of those Jehovah's Witnesses. Because, see, I don't agree with them. And so I don't want to be identified with that group. I was a Jehovah's Witness when I was born. I was raised that way. And, I've already given you some of my experiences. But I think it's important. I've been told that I need to go forward with everything and tell you every bit and piece, no matter how it makes you feel, no matter what you think about myself. I've been told that this information about my childhood and stuff can help some people. And so I'm going to go ahead in this video and begin to talk about some of my experiences. I want to explain to you what happened to me in this organization and what this organization really is. And this is kind of like an example for a lot of you that are Seventh-day Adventists or Mormons or Christian Science or whatever religion you might be. But I want to tell the story about how, I told you when I was 18 years old that I finally went back to California, and I was walking around at this flea market, and that's where I received that knowledge from our Father in heaven that what I had been doing was not right. Now, basically, the message was that, I had been controlled in a very brainwashing way all my life, and I thought that Jehovah's Witnesses were the true religion, and only the things that I was taught all my life was the truth, and everybody else was in this world, and they were all worldly, and we were all going to wait for the paradise earth that was coming soon. And I had believed that and accepted it hook, line, and sinker because that's what I was taught from the time I was just a little child. I was enrolled in the ministry school when I was like 6 years old, giving public talks, and I was standing on a milk crate down in San Francisco, selling watchtowers at 6 years old. So I'm very familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses. My father was what they called one of the anointed. Okay, there's a few of these individuals in the organization that they claim have a different spirit. They have a heavenly hope, and they're kind of the ones that our Father in heaven uses to channel, his direction and guidance to the world. Now, I was under this, my father would be, it's very odd to think about it now, but this is really the truth, that my father spoke to hundreds of thousands of people, probably as many people as Billy Graham. He spoke at Dodger Stadium and Candlestick Park, different locations in the United States, where thousands and thousands of people came to hear him speak. And at the time, I was very proud of my father, and I still am very proud of my father. I love him very, very much. And I realized that this illusion, this delusion, is very difficult to break free from. And all the people that are in that organization, whether they are my family or my relatives or whoever they may be, I think of them every day, and I love them very much. But I realize that until they are freed from this mind control, I will never ever really have my family, because they're under this great delusion. But there I was at 18, and I finally, it just came over me, this vision, and at that moment, that was it. I realized this organization wasn't true. Well, remember we talked about coincidences. There are no coincidences. And so, in lieu with that, a very strange coincidence happened. Just as I got that vision from my Father in heaven, as though he was saying, sort of, to warn me, okay, I'm letting you know before this happens because I want you to be prepared. You're not going to be a Jehovah's Witness no more. I'm freeing you. And in just that fast, I was free. I knew in my heart and in my mind everything I'd been taught was wrong. The very next day, I'm standing out in the street, and one of the elders of Jehovah's Witnesses came by and asked to speak to me. So I stood in the street and I spoke to him for a moment. He said, "David, we've come to explain something to you." And this was a very honest, good man. And I would tell you his name, but I don't know if that would be appropriate. But if anyone who's watching this video, who happens to know the events and the times in which I speak, you might be able to know who this man is by just his last name. And I'm going to call him Soto. But I won't give his first name or anything more about him. But he was a very good man, and I respected and loved that man. And to this very day, I think about him very kindly. So he came to me that day and he said, "David, we know that you're searching for the truth and that you have many questions." And he says, "I've come to tell you, we cannot answer your questions. There are no answers, as far as we know, to your questions. Because, see, I'd been talking to him, and I had been kind of confused, and I had said, I'd like to have a Bible study, and I'd like to understand what's going on. Well, he couldn't answer me, so he said, you know what? We don't have what you're looking for. So here's what I want you to do. Meet the elders at this particular place on this particular day. It was a few days after that. I think it was on a Friday night. So I did. I went ahead and met them there. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh, these guys are going to, finally be honest and sit down and explain that, okay, yeah, we don't have any answers, and maybe we did some things that were wrong, and we're just human, and we're sorry, or yeah, we're going to help you. We're going to, we're your friends, we're your brothers, right? And so we're all going to stick together, and we're going to figure this out, and don't worry about it. I really did believe that. Well, I walked into this, it was the Kingdom Hall. There was nobody there except for me and the elders that were there. I had to stop for a moment. So I went in there, and there's these 3 elders sitting in there. And they look very serious. But I thought, okay, this is going to be great. We're going to get something straightened out here. Well, whenever they do this, they have 3 elders, and there's always one in charge, and he's called the overseer or something. Well, this particular case, this happened to be a man named Gordon, we'll call him. That was his last name. He's a very important man. This was in an area in Sacramento where there was a lot of rich people. Like I said, Jehovah's Witnesses, I didn't know it at the time, but basically it's just an organization to recruit middle management. And these were very, very powerful men. Sitting before me was someone who, I don't know to this day who he really is, but he had something to do with AT&T. He was kind of somebody said he was the president of AT&T, but I don't know if it was just that particular branch or what. Anyway, then there was another guy who, as I mentioned, Mr. Soto, who was a good friend of mine. And I could tell he wasn't really comfortable with what was going on. Then another elder that was just, I don't even really remember too much about him. I don't remember his name. But this entire congregation, or Kingdom Hall there in California, had all kinds of millionaires and people that would, during my time as a Jehovah's Witness, I found out that most of the elders among Jehovah's Witnesses are usually somehow involved with some kind of business arrangement. There was one of the elders there that was starting up a restaurant chain that at that time was just a small restaurant chain, and now has become a very major restaurant chain in the United States. And there was another guy in that congregation, one of the elders, that was he owned a chain of banks, and there was different people there that had quite a bit of money. Now, I'm not saying they were all connected. A lot of these people don't know what's going on. It's the organization itself that gives these people a connection. And some of them are very sincere individuals. This is what our country is made up of very sincere individuals. The particular overseer that was there started to ask me some questions, and I thought, okay, this is great, because he says, now, we want to know if you've committed any sins. And I thought, well, that's kind of a strange question, because I thought they were here to talk about what they could do to help me. And I thought, well, he's probably just wanting to know, if I'd done anything wrong, and that they can help me and talk to me about that. So I said, yeah, I had gone into another church, okay, which at the time I didn't think much of that. But you see, I was always brainwashed, and I was told, you could never go into anyone else's church because there was demons in there and devils. And Jehovah's Witnesses only attend their own kingdom halls. They don't believe in churches or crosses or, everything's evil. So I confessed that I had gone into another church. What I didn't tell them was that I had been out in field service, going from door to door, like a good Jehovah's Witness, and I'd actually gone into the church to preach to those people. We'd actually had a debate I debated the pastor of that church in front of everybody there in his church, and I didn't really go into the whole thing, but I felt bad at the time that I was in that church because this is the way they taught me. And I said, okay, so what else have you done? I mean, they marked that down as apostasy, right there. So then they asked me, so what else have you done? And I said, well, I drank a beer, which I knew at the time that wasn't immoral or wrong. Even Jehovah's Witnesses drink a beer or a glass of wine. And I never admitted to being drunk or anything like that. But they wrote that down. I guess they wrote that down as I was, experimenting in alcoholism or something, some kind of crazy thing. And they asked me, okay, so what else, anything else? And I said, well, I had taken one puff of a cigarette. And I was going to explain to them what that was all about. But they said, okay, that's enough. Go out of the room. That was it. And I thought, then it started dawning on me this was something was going on here. So I went outside. I waited for a few minutes. Didn't take about 2 minutes, and pretty soon they said, all right, hey, come on back in here, Dave. So as I walked over, I sat down. He says, okay, well, we've decided that you will be disfellowshipped. You are not allowed to call yourself Jehovah's Witness. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. You are not allowed to do this and that, and you will, I mean, as this guy was saying all this to me, 18 years of my life started flashing before my eyes. And in that moment, I just broke down in convulsions, crying on the floor. I was so helpless, I couldn't even get up. I fell to my knees and couldn't get off the ground, just sobbing. And those three elders promptly got up, stepped over me, and walked out of the room. And I never saw any of them again. I crawled because I was so weak I couldn't get out of the building. I crawled out to the front door and onto the steps and literally dragged myself to the car, sobbing. My good friend, Soto, stood and watched me. I didn't really pay much attention how he was responding, but I was too busy, just completely shocked. And so I went to my car, and after I got a hold of myself, I tried to, figure out where and who I was. But I found out later what had happened. They had gotten some. There was two girls, Jehovah's Witness girls, that had called them and had said that I had smoked some drugs and done some drugs. Well, they didn't really stop to talk to me to find out what actually really happened. I would have told them what happened. I started to tell them. This puff of the cigarette that I took was a marijuana cigarette. And what had actually happened is that these two Jehovah's Witness girls invited me over to their apartment. And I was only 18 years old, and I was, kind of attracted to one of the girls. And I was kind of confused and not sure what was going on. And the first thing that happened when I got there, because there was a couple other people that were there that were not Jehovah's Witnesses, they got me a glass of water and they had me drink it. Well, at that point, I started to hallucinate. I don't know what they did. They laced that water with something. And then I started spinning around. The chair was going around. The room was going around. This little apartment in the, suburbs now all of a sudden became this mansion, and it was this long hill down to my car. And I was trying to get to my car, and I couldn't, figure out what was going on. I remember people walking up to me and asking me, "Are you okay? What's going on?" They were laughing, and they were having a good time. And at that point, they offered me this cigarette, and I was just spinning. I didn't even know who I was or where I was, and so I did take one puff off that cigarette. And I guess it was a marijuana cigarette, but that was not what was causing all of this hallucination. All the way home, I drove all the way home, and I was so hungry I couldn't even stand it, and I was hallucinating, seeing these restaurants all the way home. I'd pull into the parking lot and there was nothing there. I actually made it home And I thought I was going to die. I mean, my heart was pounding so fast. I really thought maybe I should go into the hospital. I didn't know if I was going to make it through the night. I never really got to tell Jehovah's Witnesses what actually happened, that I was actually drugged by two of their own. And to this day, I don't know whether it was set up or what happened, but it didn't matter because, you see, a few days after I had gotten used to what had happened and realized what was going on, I realized that this was all destiny. And my Father in heaven had been, preparing me for this. And it was time that I leave. So at that point, my entire family thought that I was apostate. I heard from the grapevine down the road that they had announced at the Kingdom Hall that I was apostate, that no one could ever speak to me again. From that point forward, I never had any contact or communication with my family that was living in that town, or the friends that I had developed for years. And now, to this day, I'm kind of a loner. But it turns out that my Father in heaven had big plans. He wanted me out of the organization. I had to get through that. It was kind of like a massive detox from all of this brainwashing, and it just started swimming. And for the next 2 or 3 years, I just went through all kinds of prayer and research. I would watch anybody's program that thought they had the truth, or I would talk to anybody who thought they knew what the truth was. I read several books, and I just did everything I could to try and figure out what was going on in my life. I knew that everything I had learned up to that point was false, and everything I was going to learn from this point forward was going to be a journey. So that's really my story, and I'm going to go ahead and shut it off there. We'll get back into it here maybe tomorrow and talk a little bit more about my experiences and what happened, how I came to the place that I am today. I hope that helps some of you to realize that do not put your trust in earthling man. Don't ever trust any human being, not even your own family, because you see, they're only human beings. Nobody's perfect, and you really can't expect any human being to always be there for you. The only person you can ever trust is our Father in heaven, because they're watching over us, and everything you're going through, they're allowing to happen. And when you're ready, they're going to bring you out of whatever it is that you're in and take you to another level. So until tomorrow, it's David Vose signing out.